The night my daughter called me in tears, I thought she was about to tell me that her marriage had finally fallen apart. I never imagined the real truth would place my son-in-law on the front page of every news channel before the next sunrise. One single phone call changed everything, and I had spent many years hoping I would never have to make it. My name is Robert Collins, and this is the most painful story I have ever shared. Before we begin, the images shown throughout this video are visual recreations made to help tell this story. It was almost 11 o'clock at night when my phone started ringing. I had just finished cleaning the kitchen and was preparing to go to bed. When I saw my daughter Emma's name on the screen, I smiled because she usually called much earlier. The moment I answered, that smile disappeared. She wasn't talking. She was crying so hard that I could barely hear her breathing. "Emma, what's wrong?" Several long seconds passed before she finally managed to answer. "Dad," she whispered. "He said I own nothing." I froze where I was standing. "What happened?" She took a slow, shaky breath before speaking again. "Jason told me everything in this house belongs to him now. He said I have no rights, no money, no future, and if I leave, I'll walk away with absolutely nothing." Each sentence felt heavier than the one before it. I wanted to ask 100 different questions. I wanted to know what had started the argument. I wanted to know exactly what Jason had done. But instead, I asked only one question. "Emma, are you safe right now?" She quietly replied, "Yes. He's gone for the night." Only then was I able to breathe again. Emma explained that Jason had slowly changed over the past year. At first, he took complete control of the family finances. After that, he removed her access to their shared bank accounts. Then he convinced her to quit her job, promising that he would provide everything the family needed. Now he was using money as a weapon. He repeated the same sentence again and again. "You have nothing without me." Listening to my daughter blame herself hurt more than anything else. She kept saying maybe she had failed as a wife. Maybe she expected too much. Maybe she was the reason their marriage had become like this. No father should ever hear his daughter believe she deserves to be treated that way. I told her to quietly pack a small bag for herself and another for the children. Then I ended the call. Not because I was giving up. Because there was one phone call I had avoided making for almost 15 years. The number was still saved in my contacts. I stared at it for nearly a full minute before finally pressing the call button. Part of me hoped no one would answer. But someone did. And before the sun came up, everything Jason had spent years hiding was finally about to come into the open. For almost 15 years, I had convinced myself that making that phone call would only reopen old memories that were better left buried. That night, I realized remaining silent would hurt my daughter far more than speaking up ever could. The man who answered didn't sound surprised to hear my voice. He simply said, "Robert, I wondered if you would ever call." His name was David Brooks. Many years earlier, he had worked as a financial crimes investigator. Back then, Jason had been employed by a large investment company that became the subject of an investigation involving fake client accounts, suspicious financial activity, and hidden money transfers. Jason had been questioned during that investigation, but investigators never found enough evidence to officially charge him. Eventually, the investigation was closed. Or at least that was what everyone believed. David quietly told me something that made my stomach tighten. "The investigation never truly ended," he said. "We just lost the last witness." Then he asked me one simple question. "Why are you calling now?" I explained everything. I told him how Emma had lost access to the family money. I explained how Jason claimed every house, account, and asset belonged only to him. I described his sudden confidence and the threats he had been making. David stayed completely silent for several long seconds. Finally, he asked, "Does Emma have any recent financial paperwork?" I drove to her house immediately. She had already packed 2 small bags for herself and the children. Seeing my grandchildren asleep on the couch with their backpacks sitting beside them broke my heart in a way I can't fully describe. Emma handed me a folder filled with paperwork. Inside were bank statements, property records, tax documents, and other financial papers. At first glance, everything looked completely normal. Then one page immediately caught my attention. The same company name appeared again and again. Emma had never heard of it. Neither had I. David asked me to photograph every document carefully and send them through a secure connection. Less than an hour later, my phone rang once more. The moment I heard his voice, I knew something had changed. "Robert," he said, "don't tell Jason anything." My heart immediately started beating faster. "What did you find?" He answered quietly. "The company listed in those documents has been under federal investigation for almost 2 years." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. David explained that several suspicious bank accounts and properties had recently been connected during an ongoing investigation. Jason's name had quietly appeared more than once. But until tonight, investigators had never been able to connect the missing financial records. Emma's paperwork completed the final missing piece. For years, Jason had convinced my daughter that she owned absolutely nothing. The truth was much worse. He had been hiding everything. David ended the conversation with words I will never forget. "By tomorrow morning, this won't only be your family's problem anymore." As I looked across the room at my frightened daughter, holding her sleeping children close, I realized Jason had absolutely no idea that the life he had carefully built over so many years was about to fall apart before sunrise. That night seemed like it would never end. Emma and the children stayed at my house, but neither of us managed to get any real sleep. Every small sound outside made us wonder if Jason had somehow discovered where they were hiding. Then, at exactly 5 o'clock in the morning, my phone began to vibrate. It was David Dott. His very first words instantly made me realize that everything had changed. They had moved much quicker than we expected. Within just a few minutes, every local news channel interrupted its regular morning broadcast. I switched on the television without saying a word. Emma walked into the living room holding a fresh cup of coffee. The cup slipped from her hands the second she looked at the screen. Jason's picture appeared on every channel. The headline said, "Federal investigation results in multiple arrest warrants in major financial fraud case." My heart dropped. The reporters explained that investigators had spent several years following millions of dollars connected to fake investment businesses, hidden property deals, and stolen retirement savings. The evidence Emma had unknowingly kept inside her own home helped connect the final missing pieces. Jason wasn't only controlling his wife, he had secretly hidden assets bought with illegal money while making Emma believe she had no ownership of anything. The news showed federal agents searching office buildings along with several expensive homes connected to the investigation. Then another unexpected update appeared. Jason wasn't at home. Authorities believed he had vanished only a few hours before the arrest warrants were officially issued. Emma began crying again. Not because she still loved him, but because she finally understood that the man she married had been living an entirely different life. Everything he ever told her, every excuse he made, every business trip, every late-night meeting had all been built on deception. A few moments later, my phone vibrated again. It was a message from an unknown number. It contained only one short sentence. "You should have stayed out of this." I immediately handed the phone to David. Within seconds, he looked at it and calmly replied, "Don't respond. We've already traced it." As I stood near the living room window looking outside, I finally understood something important. Jason wasn't finished running yet, but for the first time in many years, he was the one living in fear. And before the sun went down, investigators would find him in a place nobody expected. Late that same evening, the long wait finally came to an end. Federal agents located Jason hiding inside a quiet cabin beside a remote lake. The cabin had been registered under someone else's name. He surrendered peacefully without putting up any resistance. When investigators searched the cabin, they found several laptops, fake company records, encrypted hard drives, and documents connected to millions of dollars that had disappeared from innocent investors over many years. As I watched the news, it was hard to believe this was the same man who had looked directly into my daughter's eyes and confidently claimed she owned absolutely nothing. The truth turned out to be completely different. Emma legally owned part of everything they had purchased during their marriage, and the court immediately froze every asset until the investigation was fully completed. Over the following months, Emma officially finalized the divorce. She slowly rebuilt her life, returned to her job, and eventually smiled again without carrying fear in her heart. One quiet evening, she hugged me tightly and softly said, "Dad, thank you for asking if I was safe instead of asking what I did wrong." Those simple words stayed with me forever. Sometimes the most important question isn't about who started the argument. The most important question is whether the person you love feels safe enough to finally tell the truth. When I think back on everything that happened, I don't celebrate that Jason was arrested. I celebrate that my daughter finally escaped a life built on fear, control, and endless lies. Real strength isn't about having power over someone else. Real strength is having the courage to walk away from the person who keeps trying to take away your peace. Many people stay trapped in unhealthy relationships because they believe nobody will understand them or believe their story. They become silent because fear slowly convinces them that speaking up will only make everything worse. But silence only gives more power to the people who cause the pain. Emma spent years believing she had no choices left. She thought every decision had already been made for her. She believed she had lost her confidence, her independence, and even her own voice. But the truth was that none of those things were truly gone. They had simply been buried under years of manipulation and emotional pressure. Once the truth finally came into the light, everything began to change. It wasn't easy. It didn't happen overnight. There were difficult days filled with paperwork, court hearings, painful memories, and moments of doubt. But each small step moved her closer to the peaceful life she deserved. I also learned something valuable through this experience. As parents, we often think our job is to solve every problem. Sometimes, however, our greatest responsibility is simply listening without judging, asking the right questions, and reminding our children that they are never alone, no matter how old they become. Looking back now, I realize that one simple question changed everything. Are you safe? It wasn't a question about money. It wasn't about blame. It wasn't about pride. It was about protecting someone I loved. That single question opened a door Emma had been too frightened to open herself. Once she realized someone truly cared about her safety instead of judging her choices, she finally found the courage to speak honestly. Justice eventually caught up with Jason, but that wasn't the greatest victory. The greatest victory was seeing Emma laugh again without pretending. It was watching her enjoy peaceful mornings without worrying about the next argument. It was seeing her build a future where fear no longer controlled every decision she made. Money can always be earned again. Houses can be rebuilt. Businesses can recover. But peace of mind, self-respect, and personal dignity are treasures that should never be traded for anything. If someone you care about seems different, quieter than usual, or afraid to speak openly, don't immediately assume you know what they're going through. Sometimes one caring conversation can change a person's entire future. You may never know how much your kindness means to someone who has been carrying invisible pain for years. Today, Emma has a new beginning. She no longer measures her worth by someone else's words. She no longer believes the lies that once controlled her life. She wakes up knowing that freedom, honesty, and peace are worth more than anything money could ever buy. As for me, I simply feel grateful that I listened to my instincts instead of ignoring them. I'm thankful that I chose to ask one caring question instead of making assumptions. And I'm thankful that my daughter finally found the strength to reclaim her life. If this story touched your heart, Please leave a comment below and share it with someone who believes that no amount of money, success, or comfort is ever worth losing your dignity, your freedom, or your peace of mind. Thank you so much for watching Dream Life Stories. And always remember this. Sometimes the smallest question asked with genuine love can completely change someone's life forever.